Welcome, my friends. Welcome to the SitRep for today, the 3rd, 123, the 3rd of November, 2022. Here we are, November. Can you even believe that we're here already? Yikes. This year is rapidly slipping away from us as we rush towards 2023. This is the SitRep, the situation report, where I go through news stories that I've, found, have come across my desk, my theoretical desk. I mean, there is an actual desk here, but there's no news stories sliding across this desk. It's more of a digital desk. Anyway, things that I find interesting and that we can look at as preppers and go, how do we best prepare ourselves for the things that are about to happen, perhaps? How do we look into the future and figure out what might be the direction that we're heading and how we best prepare ourselves? That's what this is all about. So, without any further ado, French word. That's right, I do speak a little bit of French. Oui. Let's jump into it. Let's start with something coming out of the ABC. That's the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. Cooperative? Australian Broadcasting Communists, as far as I'm concerned, who are saying that the AFP, the Australian Federal Police, gives Solomon Islands Police semi-automatic rifles and vehicles. So they've been dumping some semi-automatic rifles. They've been the Mark 18 rifles, 60 of them, in fact, and some Toyota Land Cruisers. Where the hell did they get them from? I can't even get a Toyota Land Cruiser. Anyway, this got sent to me by one of my sources on Instagram, so thank you very much for that again. As always, when you're sending me stuff, I appreciate it very much. And this was quite an interesting one to me because obviously this is our backyard here, Australia, and this is something that I've talked about in the past. It's been a real hole in Australia's defence strategy for years and years. Like, I remember first talking about this like 10 years ago to someone, going like, man, China seems to be buying a lot of ports, seems to be, holding a lot of concerns, I guess, throughout South Pacific region, right on our doorstep here in Australia. And we don't seem to be batting an eyelid. Like, what are we doing about this? Well, it turns out that Australia, the government had seen that and they did look at it. And what they were doing about it was sweet fuck all, nothing. And they left it and they left it and they left it. And then probably about 4 or 5 years ago, all of a sudden went like, oh, wait, I see what China's doing here. Okay, let's play catch up. However, when you're trying to play catch up in the same game that someone else is playing, when they've got over 1 billion people and the second largest economy in the world, you're not going to do it. So Australia right now is trying to woo some of these countries back to us, because Solomon Islands in particular has just signed an agreement with China within the last couple of months, which kind of put Australia on edge a little bit. But and Australia came out and said, "You can't do that. Look at us shake our fists at you. You're ours." And Solomon Islands was like, "What have you done for me lately? Australia? What have you done for me lately?" Good question. What have we done for you lately, Solomon Islands? So now we're trying to woo them back. Look, here's some shiny semi-automatic rifles and Land Cruisers. We'll give you Land Cruisers. Like, that's cool. If I'm in the Solomon Islands right now, I'd just be playing this for everything that it's worth. I'd be like, "Hey, China, you see what Australia bought me? What do you guys got?" I don't think we can win this way. Win as in win the hearts and minds of Solomon Islands. I think we need to take another angle on this and actually think about what Solomon Islands really wants as a long-term goal and go like, "Hey, can we help you achieve that? Do you really believe that getting into bed with China is going to be the best thing long-term for your country?" Spoiler alert, it's not. So interesting stuff coming out of there in this sort of space. So what was that? 60 Mark 18 rifles and 13 new police vehicles. AFP says it's providing local officers with quote unquote enhanced capabilities. I think they're just talking about what they've given them here. This is ahead of the Pacific Games that are actually happening over there. So what's really interesting about this is Australia has this habit of doing this sort of stuff, going into these sort of areas and going like, hey, this big meeting's happening here, this official thing's happening here, we're going to pump money in, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're building up the capability here. And then as soon as it happens, just going like, who? I'm sorry, Solomon who? I'm not. No, I'll have to check. Do we know a Solomon Islands here? No, sorry, I think you got the wrong number. And just ghosting them. So it'll be interesting to see what actually happens here after all the Pacific Games wind down. But very much in the MO of Australia, I think. Poland is building a barrier on its Kaliningrad border. Is this a new Iron Curtain? Are we seeing a new wall? Is this Cold War Part 2? Cold War Part 2, where that was sort of instigated by the building of the wall through Berlin, and it ended with the bringing down of the wall. I mean, it wasn't instigated. That was one of the key things that sort of said, oh, hang on, no, there is a separation in the world here between Russia and the US. That's, it personified it, if you will. We're seeing new barriers being built to ward off the Huns, the evil that is Russia, that's trying to invade our good Western world right now. So this is actually adding to borders that they've already put in, or things that they've already put in Poland, where this is in the Kaliningrad enclave. For those who don't know, it's a little chunk of Russia that kind of sits north of, north of Poland, south of the Baltic states, up against kind of Belarus type area, or close to. And it's technically Russian sovereign land. So they're building this this border. They're calling it the dam. Will consist of 3 rows of blade wire, which is used by military around the world. It's not really that important. 3 layers that will allow the construction of a temporary dam, such as it was on the Polish-Belarusian border. That's also what they built. It'll be 2.5 meters high and a width of 3 meters. So 3 meters thick, 2.5 meters high. This kind of sounds like a wall. They're also going to start looking at building in things like electronic surveillance. There was a few other things that they're putting in there. I don't know, just this huge fence idea that they're going to have armed guards allegedly or potentially there as well, guarding it. Just really interesting stuff that we're starting to see. Like, I look at this sort of stuff and I'm like, okay, yep, like the writing is on the wall now. If we haven't figured it out, and if you haven't figured it out yet, like, this is a world war that we're involved in. It just hasn't gone fully kinetic everywhere yet, like in multiple locations. Once we start tying it together, I think we'll look back at this time here and we'll be like, oh, this is, we're in World War III. And we were in World War III since February 24th, when Russia invaded the Ukraine. Somebody who does back me up on this, though, finally. No, there's heaps of people who have been saying this. Author, economist, Nouriel Roubini has just put out a new book called Mega Threats. And in it, he is claiming it's already happening. World War III has effectively begun. I haven't read this book. I am going to get this book now. Probably I might download it or even get it on Audible and listen to it if it's on there. But I will read this book, and I might even do a little bit of a review on it, or maybe put it into my recommended books. But this guy, in case you don't know who this is, also had like these. He's nicknamed Dr. Doom. If you can get a nickname, like, well, that's a pretty spicy one. I don't think that's too bad as a nickname, really. If you get named after a Marvel character of any sort, that's pretty cool. But Dr. Doom here, he predicted previous to 2008 that there's going to be a market meltdown. There's going to be a number of issues. He said, look at this housing crisis thing. Look at this subprime lending, blah, 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 debt, blah, blah, blah. This is going to cause a collapse. And everyone was like, okay, Dr. Doom. And then boom, it collapsed. So he's one of those sort of ilk of people with your Michael Burberrys and all that sort of crowd that were sort of saying, hey, the sky is falling around 2007. And then the sky fell and people were like, huh, how would we have known though? How would we have predicted this possibly ever to occur? Oh, well, we could have listened to any of those people. Well, those people now are saying the same sort of stuff. So maybe we should start listening. Anyway, I'll check that book out and let you know what I think of it. Mega Threats by Rubini. Rubini, yeah. Potentially lethal new super strain of COVID created in London lab. A report has just come out with. This is on top of the one that was other to the one that was made in Boston. Why? Why are you doing this? Why? Like, honestly, renowned molecular biologist describes development as insanity. I agree with this person. This is absolute insanity. Well, I don't know why they're continuing down this path. Anyway, the reason I decided to snap this, a lot of COVID shenanigans come into the news all the time, and I'm just like, yeah, whatever, okay, blah blah blah. We don't really need to hear more about this sort of stuff. The reason I snapped this one was, it just made me think this morning. I'm like, what if they do create some sort of like new fucking COVID strain that's super deadly and can't be stopped? And the same thing happens with what happened in the Wuhan one, that it gets somehow out of the lab. That was a spicy comment within itself, wasn't it? But that's looking more and more likely. I think people are starting to come around to that idea that it was created in a lab and that it got out somehow. I'm not saying, it was intentionally put out there, but it got out. And so what happens if that happens again, but it happens with this one coming out of Boston or this one coming out of London, and the actual disease that we're looking at now is not something that has a 0.03 death rate across the board, or if you're below 65, a 0.003 death rate. And if you're a healthy individual and in that sort of working age range, that it is statistically insignificant that you get it or you don't get it. Doesn't really matter if you did. What if it's not that? Which, by the way, based on those stats there, we shut down the entire world. We totally tanked our own economy. We destroyed what we had. We caused untold, unfathomable pain and destruction to ourselves by fucking our own economy, by causing human misery and pain. And that's not even talking about the actual direct effects of people turning on each other. That's just us locking down across the world. So that we did that for something that was 0.03% deadly. What if we have something that's 3% deadly? Or some of these things, some of the numbers they're banding around here, 60 to 80% deadly. What are we going to do then? Anyway, it just made me think, right, what happens if that escapes and that gets out? What are my preps like right now? What are my preps like? What if I had to lock down? I always say this to people. What if you had to lock down for 3 weeks right now? Do you have enough food and water and other shenanigans within your house? Why am I using that word so much today? Shenanigans. Must have had some weird dream about it. Anyway, you've got enough stuff in your house to survive 3 days. Sorry, 3 weeks. Do you have that right now? Well, this could be potentially much worse. I'm looking at this and going like, do I have enough for 3 months? Do I have the protective gear? Spoiler alert, I do. Sorry, but do you have it? That's the question. Do you have your white suits, your bio suits, your biohazard equipment? Do you have your full face gas masks ready to roll that have filters on it that can stop biological issues? Do you have your gloves, your tape, all that sort of stuff? Do you have these sort of things that can really deal with this doomsday thing? And I don't usually dig on this, but that's where I'm at this morning, guys. I mean, I'm using guys in the non-gender way, by the way. That's inclusive of everyone. Gang, do you have that stuff? I don't like to preach the whole, hey, you need to be prepping for doomsday. Where I usually try and aim is like, hey, prep for making your life better regardless of what happens. And that's always what you should do. But also, I think we need to start paying a bit more attention to this. Nuclear, biological, chemical problems, NBC. This is something that when I was in the military, we did do training over this. We did actually train and practice operating in warlike conditions with what we would call NBC suits, nuclear, biological, chemical, contaminants, issues, problems, whatever it was, but how to do with that. So it's full gas masks, it's full mop suits, as they're called, dealing with this sort of stuff. Do you have that? Do you have that for your family? Or do you have the ability to lock down your domicile, your house, your home, to make it sealed off from the outside world, just in case? And I'm talking about like, hey, here's an idea. Dual purpose stuff when we're prepping, okay? Do I have plastic sheeting and miles of 100-mile-an-hour tape or duct tape at my house? Yes, I do, because that is a good plan for something like a storm or something like that. If a tree comes down on my house, if windows get smashed, I can put up plastic sheeting. If the roof gets cracked or broken or something like that, I can put up tarps, I can tie them down. I've got, AC straps, I've got Oki straps and all sorts of stuff like that to repair my house. Also, I could seal my house off from the outside world if need be. So that's something that I want you to put into your heads today. Again, like I said yesterday, yesterday afternoon or evening when I was doing a quick SitRep, which wasn't that quick, I was starting to say, like, hey, I'm starting to feel it at the moment that we're getting a little bit closer to that big emergency time. Usually, prepping's a good thing to do at any time. Prepping's the best thing to do when the sun is shining and everything's fine. That's when we can best prep. When we're prepping under duress, when we're prepping in emergencies, that's a bad time to actually prep. We should be making hay while the sun shines. And right now, the sun is shining. I just looked at it. Let me see. Top of 17, no nuclear fallout today. So, do these preps now. Prep for the rain while it's not raining. Kieran, how you going? It's been a process, got most of it out canning again this weekend in response to what I was just saying. Awesome. Love to hear it. I love to hear other people's prepping stories about your wins. And I think we need to share this sort of stuff, because what I'm trying to harbor here is a community based on inclusivity. It's not like us and them, like, look at the normies, look at the NPCs. I mean, yeah, they're normies, they're sheeple, they're NPCs. We get that. Let's try and bring them into the fold. Let's try and make them into a PC, into a actual involved member of our community. That's what I want to get to. Or that's what I want to encourage, at least. And we can do that by sharing our preps and talking to other people about it as well. And just demystifying it and seeing, like, hey, that Gads guy, he's a little bit crazy, but he's not a full nutter. All right. He's not full like doomsday prepping or anything like that. He's a relatively level-headed. I'm making some assumptions about myself now, but I like to think I'm a relatively level-headed individual. And using that as a sort of platform, like, hey, I'm not crazy. I'm not that crazy uncle. I am a little bit, but also I'm a prepared individual. And prepared individuals are strong individuals, self-reliant individuals, responsible individuals. That's what we should aim to be, I believe, anyway. Feel free to argue with me, as I always say. If you have a counterpoint to anything that I say, let me know. Let me know. I'm all about that. Futures surge amid speculation China set to ease COVID zero policy. This, I almost laughed this morning when I saw this. I just about cracked up laughing, because I'm like, wow, this is where our stock market is right now. Has always been to a certain extent, but we can see it now getting to extreme proportions with our stock market. If you're into the stock market, good for you. Like, I'm not for it or against it. I think people should, try and make money in any way they want. And I don't think the stock market is evil or bad in of itself. I think it's just, you just really got to pay attention to it, what's going on. I also think it's a very good indicator of human sentiment at any given time and where we might be heading, especially the futures. Futures, stocks are made up things. Stocks are like trust about something. Futures are about trust of that trust about something. So they're so disconnected from like actual reality. They work basically on rumor and innuendo and how people feel, which is a fucking horrifying thing when you think that this is like trillions and trillions of dollars based on some about how somebody feels on any given day about something. So anyway, futures went up because they said there was a rumor that came out. China's coming out of lockdown. They're like, that's great. And I'm like, I can see where this is heading. Guess what? China came out and guess what they said? Yeah, we're locking down harder now. Guess what the futures did? Guess what every stock market just did? Boom, hit a fucking brick wall and just dropped. And I was just looking at the price. I was looking at a whole heap of indices today. SPX, the NASDAQ, Dow Jones. I'm waiting for the Australian market to open because it's going to do the same thing. Gold, silver, Australian dollar against the US, all of them went like this. And there's just this marked fucking line that goes straight down. It's not a huge drop off or anything. Like, it's not the crash or anything right now. But like, how did you not see this coming? Who didn't see that happening? I don't know squat about stocks or investing or anything like that. But I'm like, this seems so obvious to me that this is going to happen. And there it is. The one thing I want to really point out about us, though, when we're looking at this sort of stuff, when we look back historically, when the stock market starts to become less and less linked to reality and starts to become more volatile, they are points when we are close to some sort of catastrophe of epic proportions. So every time there's been some sort of market drop and a real world equivalent of shitness that's happening to our collective fans, then what we've seen preceding that has been these sort of stock market volatilities of them going up and down and moving on rumor and innuendo and all sorts of craziness, like tulips and, fuck knows who, whatever it is that's going on at the time. So, I look at this sort of stuff and I'm going, all right, I can see this stuff happening within the stock market right now. I don't necessarily need to be involved in it, know all the intricacies of it. I can just see that this thing's going like up and down, and every other day they're like, best return we've had in 3 months. This week's been the best. Oh God, woe in the market. This is the worst we've seen in 80 years and all this sort of shit that's going on. Just forewarned is forearmed. We can see this stuff coming at us from right now. Kieran says, good time to buy gold and silver. I think every day is a good day to buy gold and silver if you can afford it, personally. Gold and silver did take a little bit of a hit. I didn't look at the actual prices this morning, but I did notice that the Australian dollar also took a hit. So what we really need as Aussies is the Aussie dollar to go up against the US dollar and gold and silver to come down in reality against the US dollar, because it's all correlated. I've put out a few YouTube videos about it, but essentially, if the Aussie dollar is tanking and gold and silver are tanking at the same time, it makes no difference to us to the price of gold and silver, because gold and silver is like the price we look at for gold and silver is against the US dollar, not against the Aussie dollar. So if you can understand that, it's in US dollars. We have to trade essentially in the US dollar. We don't actually trade in the US dollar. We buy it in Australian dollars, but it affects if the US dollar is stronger against the Australian dollar, which I think it's at about 64 cents at the moment. So 64 US cents for an Aussie dollar. Correct me if I'm wrong. But like I said, I haven't looked at it this morning. It might be actually in a good position. Also, like something that's interesting in the gold and silver market that I've noticed recently, especially in the places where I have historically bought it from, Ainsley Bullion and ABC Bullion, but especially Ainsley Bullion, seem to throw up little sales here and there. So keep your eye on them. Definitely go and give them a follow on YouTube, because they'll usually post up something about it. Both ABC and Ainsley Bullion put up good information. I would say Ainsley probably put out more information about gold and silver, what it's doing, but they also put out little specials here and there when they're like, hey, we're going to sell these I think they had Krugerrands the last 24 hours, which is South African coins, bullion coins for sale. So definitely go check them out. Bird flu, 1.1 million chickens culled in Iowa at the start of autumn. UK has just been warned to put all birds indoors now. Outbreak of bird flu, really worried about it. Lock those birds down. Here's the key point of this, though. We are now, quote, we are now facing this year the largest ever outbreak of bird flu, and are seeing rapid escalation in the number of cases on commercial farms and in backyards. That was like, when I read that, my eyes were popping out of my head. I'm like, what? How can you, how even would you measure what? The issue with bird flu really comes about with any sort of pathogen, with any sort of pandemic, any sort of disease. When you put too many, I think the technical word is reservoirs, but when you put too many carriers of a disease too close together for too long, the disease can multiply very quickly, i.e. a commercial farm where they pack fucking chickens in there. Now, that's an issue, and I am not a massive fan of commercial farming, but there are better ways to do it and less better ways to do it. I'm a fan, in case you haven't figured it out yet, of people sourcing their own food and growing their own food. So, individual backyard farms. That's what I'm all about. That's what I think people should be doing, and that's what I think our government should be encouraging, not shutting down. I think that if everyone had their own chickens in their own backyards, we would not have bird flu. I get that bird flu can be transmitted through wild birds and can still move from backyard to backyard. However, I think that the actual instigator of the bird flu is coming out of commercial farms. And this is totally outside. Like, I'm not even, like, the tinfoil hat's not even on today, gang. It's over there somewhere. All right. I'm not even getting into conspiracy stuff, because I would be starting to talk about, is this even real? Or where did the bird flu actually come from at the start? Was this an introduced thing? So the tinfoil hat's way, way over there. I'm not even putting this on. I'm just saying that, like, it's obvious from a logical standpoint. More birds packed into shorter space in shitty conditions creates disease, or creates the environment in which disease can proliferate. Less birds dispersed over larger areas in individual flocks would mitigate most of the circumstances, most of that environment in which disease, like bird flu, can proliferate. So I encourage people to really consider having backyard crops like this, backyard animals, and just give them big FU to the government. If they're going to start shutting this stuff down, then this is where we really should start pushing back. Indonesia is stockpiling food rapidly to weather the food crisis. Just give you some of the numbers here. Some of the things they're looking at stocking. Secure stocks of rice, corn, soybeans, shallots, chili, sugar, household cooking oil, as well as some meats and fish. They're trying to reach 1.0 million tons of rice reserves by the end of this year. 1.2 million tons of rice reserves. That is, think about that amount, 1.2 million tons. That would be enough for 3.9% of their domestic demand. So not even 4% of their human beings could eat if they got to 1.2 million tons of rice. And that's an if, by the end of the year. And, like, what else are they going to do, aside from that? And that's if everything is working in the system. That's assuming that nothing gets worse over there in 2023. I believe things will get worse in 2023. I think our food system is at the point of an almost system-wide, and I'm talking about worldwide, system-wide collapse. On top of this, so put that aside from that, for a second. On top of this, this is more evidence of what I think is actually really problematic or potentially problematic in the world, but something it's a trend that's happening in the world at the moment. Countries are doing it for themselves. We are turning as nations inward, putting the borders up, like Poland has just done to Kaliningrad, like Austria is doing at the moment. Like many countries within the EU are starting to think about increasing the restrictions on immigration. That's what we're going to see in the future. Countries pooling in their resources, not exporting as much, really starting to stockpile food and bunkering down for what is going to be a hard year next year. And, we can sort of look at that and go like, oh shit, that's bad. But we can also look at that and go, cool, what can I take away from that as an individual? Here's a nation of what do they got, like 100 million people? Hundreds of millions of people in Indonesia. They've got a huge population, right? Well, let's do some maths. 1.9, I'm just kidding. They're starting to worry about it. They're starting to stockpile food. I take that on. I took that personally. I'm like, wow, what can I do? How much rice reserves do I need to feed my family? How much rice reserves do I need to help support my community and to start bunkering down as a community? That's the way we need to start looking at this sort of information, not as like doom and gloom. It's like, what can we do? What's our part? This is a government too who's actually looking at this. Have a think about that. As Australia and New Zealand, have they released any information about their stockpiles of food? Probably not. Australia and New Zealand, well, Australia certainly, net exporter of food, so probably not that worried about it. Last thing I'm just going to touch on here. This is just something interesting I want people to think about. Obviously, North Korea, South Korea, what's going on there? I'm still keeping an eye on that. That's pretty big news to me. What's happening there? That is a huge flashpoint that could go up any second, literally any second right now. But there have been more missiles fired overnight. There's been more shots fired, like literally shots fired, but not just missiles. They're also firing off artillery and things like that into the ocean. This fucking ocean's just getting pounded at the moment. Ocean's like, why? What did I do to you, Koreas? But they're getting pounded. One landed very close to an island that South Korea says is theirs. So the situation is very tense there this morning. I'll be keeping my eye on that, though, see if anything goes up there. Now, Russia issues statement on nuclear war prevention. Their Ministry of Foreign Affairs has come out and said, look, we're calling on all nuclear-armed states to not give in to any provocations. It should be non-allowable. It's not unwinnable, any sort of nuclear war. As per our laws around the use of nuclear weapons, Russia's personal laws, what we enforce upon ourselves, this is them speaking, obviously not me, I'm not friggin' Russian. They're saying that we cannot use them unless in retaliation. So on the surface, this is Russia coming out saying, look, we're not going to use any sort of nuclear weapon. We're not doing that. Despite what the Western media is saying, we are definitely not going to do that. All right. We can only use them in retaliation. It's also, if I'm reading the subtext of this correctly, or the way I interpret it, is them saying, if you use any sort of nuke against us, we will use ours, because that is within our law to do. So it's kind of a veiled threat here. Interesting side note to this: Zelensky overnight and Biden overnight, in separate occasions where they were talking, got asked questions about Russia's use of nuclear weapons, and they both said, like, paid it off, basically said, oh no, Russia, I don't think they're going to use, no, they're definitely not there, they're not using it, which is good. I think is good news. I think, this is a 180 from what I've been seeing in the media recently from Western sources and politicians and such, where they're being like, Russia's going to nuke us, Russia's going to nuke us, hey everyone, Russia's going to nuke us. All of a sudden they're coming out and saying like, oh no, I don't think they will, they don't have the balls to do it, they couldn't do it even if they wanted to. So real interesting 180 on that. It's a good 180, but also it's a notable 180 to me. I'm like, okay, Why all of a sudden are you backpedaling on that? What has changed and what phone conversations happened there? Commie Hunter says, strange thought there was peace. Are you talking about Korea? Korea, actually interesting if you are talking about Korea, Korea has not been at peace since the Korean War in the 60s. They've been at a state of ceasefire against each other, but still technically at war. They've got a large demilitarized zone in between the two countries now, but they've been looking at each other for decades now. Kieran says, I trust Putin over Brandon any day. Sorry. Not that Brandon. Yeah, I don't trust anyone. Pretty much. I think all world leaders are a bit fucking unhinged at the moment. So, yeah, that's what I try and do here. I look at both sources, though. I look at both extremes and then try and figure out where's the middle ground here. The truth might be somewhere in here. That's what we're all trying to do. Just trying to, and why we're trying to do this is just figure out where we need to best prepare ourselves as individuals. So again, that sort of stuff's geopolitical stuff, could kick into some sort of larger kinetic war in the not too distant future. But here in Australia, like I said, sun is still shining. No nuclear fallout is predicted today. So get out there and get your stuff ready. Start stockpiling your food. Have a think about that, what I was talking about today. What if it was a longer lockdown that you had to do? What if it wasn't 3 weeks? What if it's 3 months and it wasn't a government imposed one? What if this one was imposed by yourself? You just decided like, I ain't going out there. Not today, friend. All right, gang. I've actually gone way over time and now I'm late. So I've got to jet. Hope you're all well, good, healthy and happy wherever you are in the world today. Make sure that you are continuing to do your preps, keep a big smile on your face, but keep your eyes open with what's going on in the world. Thank you very much again for joining me. Thank you very much for the comments that everyone put in. And as always, Semper Paratus.